Bienvenue. J'ai avec moi Nathalie Stubler, qui est la PDG de Transavia. J'en ai aussi Monsieur Varadi, qui est le fondateur et le PDG de Wizz, et Kenny Jacobs, qui est le directeur marketing de Ryanair. Et ensemble, on va discuter donc sur la nouvelle bataille qui se dessine en ce moment au ciel en Europe, les low cost contre les low cost. Parce qu'il y a toutes les grands legal carriers comme IAG, comme Lufthansa, comme Air France KLM, bien sûr, qui sont de plus en plus en train de développer leur filiale low cost. Et en même temps, il y a les low cost carriers établis, comme Ryanair, comme Wizz, qui commencent à desservir également les aéroports majeurs, comme par exemple Francfort en Allemagne, donc, qui est aussi une nouveauté. Et comme ça, ils rentrent de plus en plus en concurrence avec les filiales aussi, des filiales low cost des grands carrières. Donc ma première question sera pour Madame Stubler. J'aimerais bien savoir là, avec cette nouvelle bataille qui se dessine, mais combien de places est-ce qu'on a en Europe vraiment pour les low-cost carriers? Est-ce qu'il y a la place pour tout le monde? Combien vont survivre à moyen terme et à long terme?
Alors, j'ai envie de vous répondre tout d'abord sur quelles sont les caractéristiques de celles qui vont rester et pourquoi elles vont rester. Donc low cost, je ne vais rien vous apprendre, hein, c'est pas la nouvelle du siècle, ça veut dire compagnie à bas coût, ce qui permet à ces compagnies d'offrir des tarifs abordables aux clients. Alors comment on va se différencier, comment on va rester, se développer si on ne se différencie plus par le tarif? Nous on pense que la bataille de la préférence client va se faire par l'expérience client. Alors, Transavia, vous l'avez dit, hein, c'est une filiale d'Air France KLM. Et nous, on pense que c'est un atout d'être une filiale d'un grand groupe. C'est un atout pourquoi? Parce qu'on a une base de clients beaucoup plus grande, qui est mondiale, qui nous donne plus de visibilité à travers le monde. Et on va bénéficier d'un programme de fidélité extrêmement puissant, qui est le programme de fidélité du groupe, Flying Blue, qui va permettre à nos clients Transavia d'aller partout dans le monde. Donc ça, c'est un des atouts pour gagner la bataille de la préférence client. Le deuxième, c'est l'expérience client. Et là-dessus aussi, on pense aussi se différencier et donc continuer à progresser en Europe. Donc l'expérience client pour nous, qu'est-ce que c'est? Alors, nous, on est plutôt basé sur des aéroports majeurs. Hein. Transavia France, c'est Orly, un aéroport très proche de Paris, qui sera relié directement en métro à la capitale. Et puis, c'est une expérience d'abord digitale. On va être très près de nos clients. Nous, Transavia, on est digital native. Mais ce qu'on cherche à faire, c'est de joindre le client par le téléphone, par le smartphone. Donc, on a déjà un quart de nos ventes qui se font déjà sur smartphone. Comme ça, on est très très proche, encore plus proche des clients. Et on répond aussi à leurs questions, alors sur les réseaux sociaux, bon, un peu comme tout le monde, mais pas complètement comme tout le monde. Nous, on a notre spécificité. On est la seule à avoir un service client sur WhatsApp. Donc ça aussi, c'est une façon de nous différencier et d'aller chercher la préférence client. Et enfin, sur l'expérience client, c'est l'expérience à bord, le voyage. Et là-dessus, c'est le staff, c'est nos hôtesses et stewards qui font la différence. Ils sont extrêmement bien notés par nos clients. À chaque fois qu'on remporte un prix, Flight Report, la meilleure low cost, c'était sur l'expérience à bord et les équipages hôtesses et stewards. Donc voilà, en quelques mots, j'essaie de vous résumer quelles sont les caractéristiques donc, des compagnies qui vont rester, qui vont continuer à se développer en Europe. Et nous, on pense que Transavia fera partie de celle-là.
Mais juste un petit... pour demander encore... vous pensez qu'il y aura toutes les compagnies qu'il y a en ce moment ou non?
J'ai pas dit qu'il y avait toutes les compagnies, mais nous on y sera. Et on y sera parce qu'on aura gagné sur la partie expérience client.
Okay, so Mr. Varadi, what do you think about that? Is there enough place for all those players who are coming up now? And
I think it's kind of an interesting transition what's going on in Europe at this point in time. I mean, clearly, legacy carriers cannot supply the capacity what intra-Europe is required efficiently to customers. So there is a change. I mean, already low-cost carriers are providing around 40% of the European short-haul capacity, and I think that just continues to rise. Where you wonder which airlines will be in the front line driving those changes, I think in commoditizing categories like the airline businesses, in commodities lowest cost prevails. Whoever is the lowest cost producer will win. I mean, with all due respect to the legacy attempts to try to transform their business at least to some extent towards low-cost carriers like Transavia, Eurowings, or Welling, but none of these carriers are making real money. And I think that's a question for how long this line can be pushed, especially when they will start competing with carriers like Ryanair or ourselves, airlines who actually make money. We will see. I think probably these large legacy carriers are too big to fail, but I don't think that they will really revolutionize the market. I think the real game changers will remain to be the efficient low-cost carriers who actually make money and they deliver the business at lower cost than their competitors. I think those will stay. The others we will see.
so,
Yeah, similarly, I think the battle has been won by the low-cost carriers. So now it's just a matter of time when the war is over. But whether it's 40 or 50%, low cost, all the intra flying within Europe, Citibank kind of think now 50% of that is done on a low-cost airline, including Ryanair, including Wizz, including Transavia. There are different types of low-cost airline. We are an ultra-low-cost airline. Wizz are quite similar to us. Transavia, Vueling is somewhere in the middle. We would call this a mid-cost airline. But the big battle is now over. What will happen in the next 10 years is at some point fuel is going to go back to something like $75 a barrel. And now if you're making a loss now, should go out of business at some point in the next 10 years when fuel goes up. And there's going to be a big period of consolidation. And in 10 years' time, we will be the biggest airline in Europe, but we are that today. You will have a big IAG group, a big Lufthansa group. EasyJet have some things to fix. Wizz will be a lot bigger. Air France, I think, is the next Alitalia. It's sick. It's sick, and it's probably the next one. It's probably the next one to go into hospital, because when you've got less than 50 million passengers with 70,000 employees, something is wrong. But we like that. It makes it's really good for our business. But look, what I've just described is how the US market looks, and you're going to end up with the big 5 or 6 carriers with 85% market share in Europe. And in 10 years' time, 75% of the flying in Europe will be done on a low-cost airline. That's what will happen. And the legacy carriers, they will always do the classic capital city to capital city routes, and they will do long haul. And that's what's going to happen. This is not a fantasy. This is what has happened in the US market in the past 30 years, and a version of this will happen in Europe.
So how long do you think that will take to this consolidation? How many years?
Probably 10 years, but the one thing about Europe is never underestimate the willingness of sovereign states to bail out a sick airline. So anything is possible. Lots of people are predicting that this winter now, Alitalia will go out of business, but I think everyone should believe that when you actually see it. So, lots of sovereign states are propping up airlines, propping up the pensions of airlines. That will end at some point in time. Somewhere around 10 years, could be 20 years. Actually, we don't really care. We just keep doing what we're doing and growing organically. Because in the past 10 years, what has happened has suited us well. That's where we've grown significantly.
And maybe because you heard it, I know you are not Air France KLM, but you are the daughter of with Transavia from Air France KLM. So what do you say about this, that Air France KLM will be the next...
Of course not. Of course not. Yes, and you mentioned the US, but in the US, the legacy carrier have restructured themselves and they are very healthy now. So, no, I don't think your predictions are right. Let's meet together in 10 years from now.
But coming back to this point, you are the Transavia is the daughter of a big legal carrier. So what disadvantages, and you started quite late in comparison to other low-cost carriers, and what disadvantages does that bring, and what advantages do you have because you belong to Air France KLM?
Alors peut-être je switch en français, if you don't mind. At least I took the advantage of the language. Alors, moi, je vais parler que des avantages. Air France, c'est mon actionnaire, donc il n'y a pas d'inconvénient à faire partie d'un grand groupe. Non, au contraire, moi, j'y vois beaucoup d'avantages. J'y vois la puissance d'un grand groupe, donc effectivement, ça nous aide aussi, ça nous donne une enveloppe financière. Ça nous a aussi, je dirais, donné l'avantage commercial. Avec l'aide donc d'un groupe comme Air France KLM, on a une emprise sur le monde qui est beaucoup plus large que notre empreinte de territoire Transavia. Donc une base de données clients beaucoup plus grosse et le programme de fidélité qui est fantastique. Flying Blue, ça vous ouvre le monde entier. Et nous, on a un réseau européen, européen et méditerranéen. Et nos clients ont quand même accès au monde entier grâce à ce programme de fidélité. Donc c'est un avantage extrêmement fort pour nous, comme une low-cost du groupe.
Mais est-ce qu'il y a vraiment, parce que vous avez dit aussi au début qu'il y a cette base de clientèle de Air France KLM, mais combien des clients de Air France KLM sont vraiment prêts à changer sur Transavia? Est-ce qu'ils le font vraiment?
On ne cherche pas à ce qu'ils changent, parce que on est là pour faire grossir le marché. Donc, ça s'est dit tout autour de la table. Le low cost, c'est vraiment pour faire grandir le marché. On ne cherche pas à prendre du trafic sur Air France KLM. On cherche à prendre notre part dans ce marché qui grossit. Les deux autres speakers en ont parlé. Donc, on est là pour faire grandir l'ensemble du groupe. Et ça nous donne, le groupe nous donne plus de visibilité. Quand on est visible sur le site internet d'un groupe Air France KLM, des clients chinois, indiens, américains peuvent nous voir, alors que sur notre empreinte européenne, ils nous voient moins. Mais voilà comment on a une base de données cliente beaucoup plus grosse grâce au groupe. Mais l'idée n'est absolument pas d'aller prendre sur le groupe. Au contraire, on est là pour faire grandir le gâteau et surtout participer à cette croissance européenne qui est très très forte dans le monde du low-cost européen.
D'accord. Ryanair a ouvert une base... No, I do it in English. Okay, sorry. I hope I won't start talking German, then nobody can. Ryanair just opened a new base in Hamburg end of last year. But now EasyJet announced that they will close their base in Hamburg because they say there are so many overcapacities on some routes from Hamburg. So how do you want to do it profitable there in Hamburg?
Well, we'll do it profitably in Hamburg because A, there's not overcapacity. That's just EasyJet saying we can't compete and we've got a much better cost base. Our cost per passenger flown is ex-fuel is 27 euros. So our cost advantage when we go head-to-head with EasyJet, be it at Hamburg, be it at Rome, be it at in the north of Italy, be it at Zaventem, we see the same thing. Also in the northwest of the UK, their home market. So I think EasyJet doesn't have as strong a cost position. They will compare themselves to BA and to Air France. They will less compare themselves to Ryanair or to Wizz, and hence I would consider them a mid-cost player. Germany's interesting. It's interesting for us at the moment. We've both gone into Frankfurt or about to go into Frankfurt. And I think when you see Ryanair and Wizz going to Frankfurt because Fraport want low-cost airlines to go to Frankfurt, that shows how the industry has changed. 5 years ago, my boss, Michael O'Leary, would have said, go to Frankfurt, are you fucking nuts? And Fraport would have said, we hate Ryanair. But it just shows you how the relationship and the dynamic has changed. That airports now need low-cost airlines because airports want to keep growing, and it's about the volume of passengers that they need. They're not going to get that air from the legacy carriers. They will only get that from all low-cost carriers, and that's how it's changed for the airports. On the consumer side then, the customer product and the experience matters, but look, let's look at who's growing here. Short-haul flying in Europe is a commodity choice. If you want to go from London to Barcelona, it's just about having the lowest fare. That's all it is. When it comes to long-haul, it's totally different. The customer experience matters, and we've had to improve our customer experience, and we've done that. And our load factor has grown, but it is all about just having the lowest price for the vast majority of European consumers, and that won't change.
Mr. Varadi, are you okay with this about Hamburg, that there are no overcapacities? And
no, I think I agree with what was said. I mean, this is not a matter of overcapacity. This is a matter of being or not being competitive in the marketplace. And I think consumer needs competition, and that's a good thing for the market. And given that this is all about a commodity, here lowest cost will prevail, and you know, lowest cost will stimulate the market, and lowest cost will win the passengers, the customers over other airlines for sure. And you know, it is not only happening in Western Europe, but it's even more happening in Central and Eastern Europe, which is an under-penetrated market. And you know, you need to bring in the lowest fares. You need to, in order to have people to jump over the bar and get into the franchise. And with that, you keep stimulating the market. So I don't think it's overcapacity. I think it is just being or not being competitive. And clearly, when you look at the European airline industry, I don't think it is any longer low-cost carriers versus legacy carriers. Within low-cost carriers, I think there is a change, a kind of a diversion from the purpose. I mean, some airlines are sticking to the principles, and I think they will continue to do well in the future. I think you are one of them, we are probably another one. And other carriers are getting stuck in between the real low-cost and the legacy carriers. And I think those are the airlines which will struggle in terms of delivering growth, in terms of delivering profitability, and those sort of issues. And we will see how consolidation is going to play out on them. But if you are on the low-cost end of the spectrum, you will do fine, and you will keep driving your business, and you will keep stimulating the markets, whether it's Western Europe or Central and Eastern Europe.
I know c'était Transavia Pays-Bas qui a fermé, qui a annoncé aussi de fermer sa base à Munich. Donc, question pour vous trois. Pourquoi est-ce que le marché allemand est le plus compliqué en Europe, ou c'est quoi le marché le plus compliqué pour vous en ce moment, et pourquoi? Quelles sont les raisons?
Je vais répondre d'abord pour Munich. Munich, Transavia Pays-Bas aussi a considéré que la montée en charge n'était pas assez rapide, hein, et moi je rejoins ce que disent les autres participants à ce débat. Il faut gagner de l'argent, il n'y a pas de doute là-dessus, hein. Nous, on se positionne un peu différemment sur la commodity, hein. On pense qu'on va gagner la préférence avec un meilleur service à nos clients, mais sur le principe de il faut gagner de l'argent, il n'y a pas de doute, il faut gagner de l'argent pour continuer à croître. Et donc Transavia Pays-Bas a considéré que la montée en charge était trop lente, donc ils ont dit on fermera Munich et puis on ouvrira autre chose. Dans le monde des low cost, il faut rester agile, hein. On ouvre, on ferme, on ouvre, on ferme. C'est, je dirais, l'agilité du réseau qui fait aussi l'agilité de la compagnie. Et mes collègues ont dû ouvrir et fermer des routes aussi. On n'est pas les seuls à l'avoir fait. Donc ça, là-dessus, je dirais, il n'y a pas d'état d'âme, et c'est aussi normal. Ça fait partie du business que d'aller se positionner. Après, sur la difficulté des marchés, on l'a redit, hein, le marché européen est en croissance. Dès qu'on est bien positionné en prix, la croissance est là. Donc l'idée, je dirais, c'est pas tant d'aller faire des choses difficiles, en tout cas c'est d'aller faire des choses qu'on sait faire pour effectivement gagner de l'argent à la fin. Et nous, côté Transavia, on se développe plutôt sur des marchés sur lesquels on est fort, Portugal, Espagne, Maroc par exemple. Puis on aime bien aussi défricher des nouvelles routes complètement différentes, comme le Monténégro cet été. Mais non, je dirais pas nécessairement de marchés plus difficiles. Il faut savoir test and learn pour le réseau.
Yeah, I think Germany is the most exciting market at the moment. We've doubled in size in Germany in 3 years. We're now about 8% of the German market, and we want to get to 20% of the German market, and we will. It's exciting because it's 90 million people. It's got the lowest penetration of low-cost airlines across the EU, and it's a wealthy economy who loves to travel. And the competition is Lufthansa, who have an average fare for short haul of over 160 euros. So when your average fare is 40 euros, this is music to our ears. So we love the German market at the moment, and Lufthansa should follow the exact same strategy that they're following at the moment. We think they're doing a great job. The most complex market in Europe is the UK because of Brexit. So look, because we will talk about each other, we'll talk about the industry. But look, in March of 2019, the UK is leaving Europe. They are leaving the European Court of Justice, and they are leaving Open Skies. The UK is the market which created low-cost airlines in Europe. You know, it's 2/3 of the flights in and out of the UK are on a low-cost airline. So the industry needs to figure out how can Europe and the UK maintain Open Skies so that we all want the same thing. We all want to keep flying to the UK in the same way. I'm sure some legacy carriers are thinking, no, if we can return to the 1980s, this would be great for our business. But we all need to find a way for Open Skies to continue. So this is the most complex market and will be for the next 2 years because of this new, unexpected, unwanted dimension from our point of view, because we would like the UK to be in Europe.
Let's talk about Brexit maybe later on. That was another question. So what do you think, the question before, about the most complicated market in Europe and why? And
I'm not sure whether the characteristics of being complicated is the way I would put it. I mean, clearly you see this issue of states intervening despite, you know, promoting market terms and market games, but actually that's not happening. We don't have to go that far. I mean, we are in Paris. I mean, Paris is a protected market. I mean, we all know that. It is protected for the Air France, KLM group, including Transavia. And to some extent, Frankfurt is a good example how the airport thought about Lufthansa and why they needed to sort of protect the status quo. But they had to realize that life has moved on, and the choice they have is to move with life or to start lagging behind in a big way. And I think that makes a difference in Europe versus the US, where I think in the US more of the market is playing out. In Europe you have this sovereign state intervention into the market, and that's why things are becoming more predictable. Personally, I think Central and East Europe is a hugely exciting marketplace. You know, if you look at the population base in Central and Eastern Europe, depending how you define it, but you know, we are talking about 300 to 400 million people. I mean, this is nearly the same as Western Europe in terms of population, but in terms of airline capacity, it's only 1/9 of total European capacity. So there is a lot happening there, and clearly it is just showing that you know, you need a certain business model to succeed in that marketplace. I also agree that I think the UK is going to be interesting. Although, at least what we can say in the UK, that the UK tends to play it on market, so less of a political intervention in the actual operation of the market can be expected, but the framework may change fairly dramatically, and that may impose some challenges on the industry.
So how will Brexit change the landscape for low-cost carriers? What are your plans exactly? How do you react already?
Well, I mean, I think that's to be seen. I don't think anyone knows what Brexit really means. I mean, people are talking about hard Brexit, soft Brexit, and all kinds of Brexits, but nobody really knows what it really means. I mean, I think you have to look at a few things, what may be affected. I mean, one issue is certainly access to market, whether you're going to be able to fly the markets, or, you know, would it change and would become kind of bilateral back in the old days. You know, you can kind of encounter that with the European Open Sky system, which goes beyond the boundaries of the European Union. That's a bigger than European scheme, and that would be actually the interest of the European Union too, and also the UK's interest to stay online when it comes to market access. But there is a risk there. Also, there is a risk on ownership and control. Obviously, we don't know how that's going to play out, how financial market issues will be settled between the UK and the Union. And you have this kind of looming day-to-day matter on how the pound is going to play out and how migration is going to be regulated, whether people will be banned or will be allowed to come in. I mean, economic reality is that there is no economy to grow without migration. I mean, I think migration is a fact of life. Whether we like it or not, I think it's just going to happen. And by the way, the biggest migrating nation in Europe is actually the Brits. They have the most people outside the country. So I think that's going to happen. It may be a bit more controlled than what it is today. I mean, I'm based in Switzerland. I'm a migrant in Switzerland. I'm a controlled migrant, but the whole process works. So I think this is going to work. And then we will see how the whole issue and Brexit impact on the currency and what challenges it may pose on the airline industry. We have a significant portion of our revenue in pound, so obviously we will be affected. I think you will be equally affected. But I think at this point in time, it's all speculation. We need to learn these terms, how Brexit will be implemented, and then I think we can comment more. But you, obviously, as an airline, work on contingencies at this point in time.
I think nobody knows. And look, it's not business people deciding how Brexit happens, it's politicians. So anything could happen next Monday. The first negotiation might take 30 minutes. So I think this is the biggest divorce in the history of mankind, or just since the world has existed. So who knows what's going to happen? I think it's clear. It now, within the space of 2 weeks, looks like it moves from being a hard Brexit all about immigration to a soft Brexit about protecting the British economy. 40 million British families will go on their holidays to Europe this next 4 months. And I think they'll all come back and go, do we really want to leave? And so I'm still optimistic that there'll be a version created, which is a bit of a win-win, where the Brits can say, we're now associate members, we have found an acceptable agreement on immigration, but the British economy does not run without the Italians, the Spanish, the Irish, the Hungarians, the Polish who run that economy. If you've ever lived in the UK, you know that that's the way it works. So I hope that a version of staying can be found. I hope that next week they say, this is the running order of the agenda. First, let's talk about connectivity. That means we're an island nation. We want to keep on flying to Europe. So can we come up with a new version of Open Skies? And if David Davis and Michel Barnier come out with a new bilateral agreement between Europe and the UK before Christmas, we'd all like that, because we don't have to change our schedules and we plan our schedules a year in advance. That would be the best thing. And I think then if they can agree that, they can agree something on immigration, and then Europe's in a better place if the Brits stay an associate member. But the risks are, you know, sterling is going to be all over the place, and it moved 1.6% on the day of the election. I think the shareholding is a big issue for IAG because it's a Spanish-run company. So how they're going to fix that is up to them. But I think some investors will just, you know, re-domicile their London-based investment to Frankfurt, to Amsterdam, to Dublin, elsewhere. I think that bit will be okay. It's really all about open skies. And the biggest concern we have is this is in the hands of politicians. And politicians don't always think rationally about these things.
Maybe. Maintenant, si on parle de... Parce que le Brexit, là, c'est une grande question. Mais je sais, peut-être on ne va pas trop m'aimer là en France, mais on a souvent l'impression que les syndicats jouent un petit peu. Et là, donc, comment vous voulez croître à Transavia avec vous avez des traités avec des pilotes. Voilà, donc, et combien de temps
Bon, déjà, je peux répondre sur le Brexit. Moi, je ne suis pas sensible à la monnaie britannique, donc easy pour moi. Non, mais on regardera ce qui se passera sur le Brexit aussi, vu de la France, qui est the most exciting market, France. But, bon. Alors, les pilotes, c'était votre question les pilotes. Eh bien, écoutez, Transavia, c'est une filiale d'un grand groupe qui a été créée grâce à un accord signé par des syndicats représentants de pilotes. Cet accord a évolué en 2015 pour nous permettre de grandir. Donc, on a signé entre Air France et ses syndicats représentatifs un nouvel accord qui nous a permis de grandir. Et donc, on n'a pas de problème à évoluer dans le cadre de ces accords. De toute façon, nous, la feuille de route, quand on est aussi une filiale d'un grand groupe, c'est la feuille de route du président du groupe, Jean-Marc Janaillac, qui l'a fixé Trust Together et qui a dit Transavia doit croître au départ des Pays-Bas et au départ de la France. Et nous avons maintenant, dans le cadre de cette feuille de route, toute l'attitude pour croître, puisqu'on a signé aussi un dernier accord au début de cette année. Donc, dans le cadre de ce qui nous est demandé par l'actionnaire, nous suivons les accords qu'il y a eu avec les pilotes et nous pouvons continuer de croître tel que l'actionnaire nous l'a demandé.
Okay, and anything about how many new routes do you plan in this year? How many routes, new routes? No.
Oh, well, you know, first of all, Wizz is managed by its management team, not by its pilots. We don't have unions, and we don't think, you know, airline growth should be subject to all kind of labor agreements. But that's the way how the industry works in certain parts of the world. But we are not overly excited about that prospect. But we grow a lot. As we speak, we are growing capacity at a rate of 23%. That means we are creating around 6 to 7 million new passengers during the year, and we're going to be growing over 100 new routes in 2017. So we have a route network of over 500 routes at the moment, and we are adding another 100 routes just in 2017. So quite a bit.
I think it would be very un-Ryanair for me not to comment on Air France's pilots. I also think they're doing a great job. They should keep going on strike because they're only paid $250,000 a year. And of course, they should have their own separate toilet that nobody else can use but the pilots on the new aircraft. That's really the way to run a business. So please carry on doing exactly what you're doing. It's fantastic. We're going to grow from 120 to 130 million passengers this year. I think there's big growth in the Italian market. That's not, you know, we already see Italian consumers, and I would say in particular Italian business travelers are switching out of Alitalia because they want to know that their flight is going to leave. There is big capacity going to Spain and Portugal because what you've seen is charter capacity driven by consumers in Germany and the UK principally don't feel so secure going to Turkey. And North Africa, so Spain and Portugal are the big winners there, winning more so than French tourism. I know French tourism will be down this year, but I think it has a good opportunity next year, but it needs to work a bit harder. All of CEE is growing significantly, and then Germany for us is a strategic move. But we see opportunities everywhere on the map. But more of our business used to be about the summer and leisure traffic. More and more of our business now becomes the winter, business travelers and working at primary airports. So we're very excited about opportunities all over the map of Europe. But the big ones I'd call out would be the Iberian Peninsula in the summer, Germany all year round, and then CEE and Italy.
Sur la croissance de Transavia France, quand même un mot sur ce qu'on vient de faire les 3 dernières années. Les 5 dernières années, pardon, on a triplé la taille de l'entreprise. En 5 ans, on a recruté 500 collaborateurs en France. Donc une très belle croissance aussi en France. C'est notre marché et c'est notre cœur de cible. Et on va continuer à croître. Cette année, la croissance est d'environ 15% sur l'ensemble du réseau. Moins de nouvelles routes que l'année dernière, mais plus de fréquences supplémentaires sur des marchés sur lesquels on est déjà fort. Donc encore une très jolie croissance et encore un développement économique. On contribue aussi au développement économique local.
Okay. Maybe some words you already said. Paris is a protected market. You're now you're starting at Frankfurt. Like like you do. Do you have any plans to would you like to come to Paris, to Orly?
Possibly. We would. The only one airport in all of Europe that we don't think we'll go to is Heathrow. Every other airport is now a possibility, and you know we're now in Frankfurt, we're now in Gatwick, in decent size. So we are, you know, over half of our growth in the past 4 years has been at primary airports. So in Paris, yes, all Paris airports are interesting. We have 9 million annual traffic in France, and we're at 30 airports with a very summer orientation all over France because we're at 30 airports. There's things of the French market that make it protected, but we just say, you know what, we're not going to get upset about that. We're just going to grow elsewhere in Europe, and you can continue to do that. But I think it will be good for the French economy, for French tourism, and for Paris itself if the market does open up. You know, in a year where lots of countries are saying, what does it mean to be European anymore? Actually, the opening up of the skies in Europe and making air travel affordable for everyday people, that's probably the best thing that Europe has done in the past 30 years. So markets shouldn't be protected, and the French airports shouldn't be protected. It should be about bringing more tourists here all year round, making it an open competition, and that is good for the wider economy, and that's what we support. So we will get bigger in France. When and where remains to be seen, but in principle, are we interested in other airports in Paris? Absolutely, we are.
Why don't you want to go to Heathrow? What's the matter about it?
We don't have a need to go to Heathrow. You know, if you take Ryanair at London Stansted, London Gatwick, and London Luton, is now a bigger airline than British Airways globally. We don't have a need to go to Heathrow. And if it's just about saying, oh, Heathrow is the airport you have to fly to in London, those days are over. You know, that is an airport in Surrey, far to the west of London. If you live in Richmond or Notting Hill, yes, it might be your airport. We don't have a need to go there anymore. The other 3 airports we operate in are working perfectly for us. And it has issues with fog, it has issues with lots of other things operationally.
And what changed that you start in Frankfurt? Do you get a lot of, how do you say, rabat? A lower price? What did they offer you? Discount price? What?
Well, I mean, just to close on France and Paris, I think Paris is one of the lost places almost on the planet that remains protected. And I think that should change, and hopefully the French will realize that actually they do better by changing their approach to aviation and the way how they protect the Air France-KLM group here. I think what changed in Frankfurt, that Frankfurt had to realize that you know, the trends have changed around the market, and the rise of low-cost carriers is inevitable, and it's not going to change, and it's not going to turn back. And they figured out an operating platform and a commercial platform which made low-cost carriers like Ryanair ourselves much more attracted to start thinking about Frankfurt. So it is not only the commercial terms, it's also the operating metrics what the airport proposed. I think that's something what the Paris airport should look at as well, how they could engage with low-cost carriers, how they can create an efficient operating platform, and how to actually make sense from a commercial perspective to attract those carriers into the airports.
But it's a commercial issue. It's not a protective issue. France is not protected at all. It's open sky as part of Europe.
Sure, of course.
So it's not. You cannot say that France is protective. You can come and fly to France at any moment. So it's just because you don't want to.
Thank you.
Look, I love France, and I love being here, and I love spending so much of my summer in Provence, and it's a wonderful place. Look, to give you some encouragement, and I hope this is part of some of the, you know, a new president who's going to be more orientated to business and growth and less orientated to what is protectionism. And even if you take air traffic control strikes here in Paris, I mean, amazing to the other airlines that, wow, isn't it incredible that Air France is the least impacted airline when there's an air traffic control strike in Paris for some reason.
Totally
and
untrue.
Every other airline will say that. It is for the benefit of the French economy, the French consumer, and the French taxpayer that the protectionism ends and that it becomes a more open market. That will be good for French consumers.
No, it's totally untrue. We are screaming also like hell when we are touched by air traffic control strike. So it's completely untrue. It's just because you're afraid to come.
Bon, je crois... là, on va pas peut-être trouver voilà, un terrain d'entente. En plus, je vois que le temps est déjà très avancé. Et on aimerait bien donner aussi l'occasion au public de poser des questions. Donc, voilà. Robert.
Yeah, I thought I'd ask about another non-protected market. With Air Berlin's imminent insolvency, do you actually expect capacity to come out of the German market, or will it just the deal with Lufthansa get done so quickly that it's really that there won't be a window to take advantage?
I think Air Berlin used to be sponsored by Etihad. Now it is sponsored by Lufthansa. So we need to see when Lufthansa is going to stop it.
I think some will come out. If they do it really quickly, not that much will come out. But there's already going to be the retreat to Düsseldorf and Berlin. You can see regional airports in Germany, some big ones, even like Hamburg, saying, okay, we need someone else to take up the routes that Air Berlin didn't run. So I think there's good opportunities in the German market. And even though we all should kind of look to Brussels and say, how can this wet lease stroke merger happen so quickly? It looks quite unusual from that point of view when you look at it from a regulatory point of view. But we're not upset about it. It's not good. You know, Air Berlin is just going to be owned by a different parent, but it's also a complexity for Lufthansa to deal with.
Hi. As a passenger, I would like to know when should I estimate to have long-haul transatlantic low-cost fares? Is it 5 years?
I think IAG would say you have it.
No, but like real.
And Bjorn Kuss, who was here this morning, would say you have it. So I think you have a version of it already. I think the industry will look at what's going to happen now with Norwegian taking on some of the legacy guys on long haul. Level is an interesting experiment. It's probably too early to say what it actually is, how's it all going to net out. I think some people are saying it's going to be Freddie Laker too. I think other people are saying this is great. We think it's fantastic that you would just have more competition and more choice. And it gives consumers obviously what they're looking for. There's huge consumer interest and consumer demand in low fares across transatlantic. We're not going to do it, but we would say absolutely good luck to Norwegian giving it a go.
Yeah, I think long-haul low-cost is inevitable. It's happening. It's going to happen. It's going to happen even more in the future. But the issue here is that this is like, you know, handball and basketball. There is a ball here, there is a ball there, but the rules of the game are very, very different. So I'm not sure that, you know, whoever is doing a good job as a short-haul carrier will necessarily do a good job as a long-haul carrier. So we are totally uninterested, so we are not going to do that. But I agree that it's happening, and, you know, we should be embracing it, and I think it's a good thing. But the skills and the approach will have to be developed accordingly to consumer needs and the operating platform of that game, which is very different from short-haul flying.
Transavia, notre ambition, c'est de très bien faire ce qu'on propose déjà à nos passagers, c'est du moyen courrier, Europe et bassin méditerranéen.
So my question is about Paris airport protection. So you say that you don't. The airports are protected, but EasyJet is making flights to both Paris airports, and they are making money. So why Wizz Air and Ryanair are not flying to those airports?
Because we're seeing that the airport service is ridiculously priced versus, what would be an acceptable cost of operating from an airport like that. When you put that in European context, we are paying an average of around 10 euros per passenger airport fee, and we would need to pay something like 40 euros here in Paris. We simply just don't do it.
That's just the answer. I mean, EasyJet's not a real pure low-cost airline. Our average ticket for all of last year was 41 euros. 41 euros. If that's the fee landing out at a Paris airport, you kind of go, why would you do that? Again, look, it is what it is. We're not upset about it. It's holding back the French market and French tourism. But it's kind of up to France to be worried about it. And if you're not, clearly half of the room thinks it's perfect, so that's fine.
Yeah, but still, but they are making money.
Le marché n'est pas protégé.
But they are making money, so I don't understand. Are you sure you are pushing the airport authorities to?
Yeah, because we're known to be such pussycats in Ryanair and Wizz. Yeah, you're right. We've just we'll go right there now and say we need to have a tough conversation.
Bonjour, Jean-Baptiste Equi, Air Cosmos. Je vais parler en français. J'ai une question pour M. Jacobs. Vous parlez des purs low cost, mais Ryanair a lancé des vols en connexion récemment à Rome. Ils ont dévoilé aussi un accord avec Air Europa. Donc vous sortez du modèle gardien du temple chimiquement pur low cost. Comment allez-vous faire pour continuer à travailler sur les coûts et continuer à croître, parce que ça va vous occasionner des coûts supplémentaires?
Yeah, that's a good question. On the Air Europa doesn't introduce any cost. This is just simply Air Europa do long haul from Madrid to North and South America. It's easier for them to fill their planes and cheaper marketing for them to advertise those fares on the Ryanair website. We are the world's most visited airline website, so it makes sense for other airlines to actually show their fares on our website, and it's just leverage in their marketing P&L. On what we've announced in Rome Fiumicino, which is a trial and it's working very well, this just allows you to go from Glasgow to Rome on a Ryanair flight and then connect from Rome to Catania, for example, in Sicily. So it's connecting through Fiumicino. We're 30% of the Italian market, so it makes complete sense for us to do it. And so far, that trial is going well. It doesn't give us complexity or it doesn't give us cost because it's Ryanair to Ryanair, and it's a 2.5-hour connection window. So it's not complexity, it's not introducing on cost. It's something customers have actually asked us for, saying, I want to go from Glasgow, for example, to Sicily, and I want to do it on Ryanair. Can you make it more simple for me to do that?
Bonjour, merci pour votre débat. J'ai une question également pour Madame Stubler. Ma question concerne les synergies commerciales entre Air France et Transavia. Est-ce que dans un futur proche, on pourrait voir les vols de Transavia France commercialisés sous le code AF pour, par exemple, des destinations qui, dans un premier temps, ne seraient pas desservies par Air France, notamment au Maroc, et qui, dans un deuxième temps, permettraient d'élargir la gamme de fréquences? Alors,
c'est déjà le cas. Depuis mi-mai, Transavia est visible sur le site internet d'Air France. Donc tous les vols dits uniques de Transavia, par exemple vous parlez du Maroc, Paris et Essaouira, est visible sur le site internet. Donc vous voyez bien l'offre Transavia. Donc quand vous cliquez dessus, vous êtes redirigé vers le site Transavia. Donc ça c'est une offre de display, comme on dit, sur le site. À l'hiver, on aura aussi quelques vols en code share. Donc avec le code Air France sur un certain nombre de vols Transavia. Et puis enfin, je dirais le plus gros, c'est le programme de fidélisation Flying Blue, où là, il est ouvert dans les deux sens. Nos clients peuvent acquérir des miles et nos clients peuvent aussi, les clients d'Air France KLM peuvent utiliser leurs miles sur Transavia. Donc les synergies commerciales, elles sont en place, elles vont continuer à se développer. Vous l'avez dit aussi, la visibilité sur les sites internet des uns et des autres accroît fortement notre capacité de vente. Donc ça sera un développement qui va continuer à se faire. Le fait qu'on soit visible sur le site, que notre offre soit visible sur le site, ça va apporter du trafic très très fortement pour nous.
Y a-t-il encore des questions? Sinon, je... Ah. Okay.
Donc, bonjour, donc moi je suis Antoine Salvador, je suis un diplômé de l'ESSEC. Et j'ai en fait une remarque et une question, en fait, c'est-à-dire que ma remarque c'est pour Nathalie Stubler. Donc en fait, vous dites que l'accord du SNPL, ça ne vous pose pas trop de problèmes. Enfin, le problème c'est qu'une low cost a besoin d'être très agile, beaucoup plus qu'une major. Et tout accord qui empêche le développement d'une low cost, en fait, en nombre de coques, va forcément poser le problème de la renégociation de l'accord en permanence. Et ça, pour moi, c'est pas possible. C'est un frein réel au développement de Transavia. Et en fait, sinon, ma question concerne le développement de Transavia en province. Donc, je voulais savoir si vous envisagez le développement de Transavia sur les anciennes bases provinces d'Air France, afin de récupérer justement des parts de marché qui ont été laissées justement à Ryanair, EasyJet, qui ont eu le champ libre pour se développer.
D'abord, je vais répondre à votre remarque. La croissance de Transavia, c'est aussi l'actionnaire qui définit la croissance. C'est pas le syndicat de pilotes. Et l'actionnaire, il a livré une feuille de route. Il nous a livré une feuille de route et nous suivons cette feuille de route. Ensuite, sur le développement des bases, Transavia s'est développé d'abord à Paris-Orly. Ça, c'était un point très fort. Nous, on considère que c'est un atout, cet aéroport. Il est proche de Paris. Il sera relié directement par le métro. Donc ça, c'est un point clé. On est la première low cost à Paris-Orly aujourd'hui. Et on s'est développé à Nantes et Lyon. Et ce développement sur ces 3 bases, il est aussi cohérent avec la taille de notre flotte. Transavia, c'est 29 avions. Donc on va continuer à se développer au départ de la France. Ça, c'est le projet du président Jean-Marc Janaillac. Et on se développera, je dirais, de façon cohérente aussi avec la taille de notre flotte. Donc on ne peut pas non plus... je dirais, s'éparpiller ou éparpiller les forces de Transavia. On doit rester cohérent avec la taille de l'entreprise. Et là-dessus, on ira chercher des opportunités, comme tout le monde, là où les business cases sont positifs. Mais on restera cohérent avec la taille de l'entreprise.